Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Josh's Coding. In today's video, we are going to be continuing on with our wave-based survival series, and we are going to be earning currency that we can spend on upgrades. So let's hop straight on into it. The first thing we're going to need to do is come to our blueprints folder, come to core, and we are going to be creating a game instance. So we can create a new blueprint class, and we can go ahead and look for game instance, and we'll select the base game instance. We can go ahead and call this BP underscore game instance. Now the reason we're creating a game instance for this is that a game instance is persistent through every single level in your game. That means if we go from the main menu to the level, then back to the main menu, the game instance will exist throughout all of it, which makes it great for storing variables that you need in different levels of the game. And that's exactly what we're going to need for currency, since we're going to earn it in the level and then spend it in the main menu. So what we're going to do is simply create a variable, and we will call it, we'll just call it points. And this will be a integer. Then what we're going to do is create a new function called add points. This will take an input, which will just be points to add, and we'll change this to an integer. Then we'll just say we'll set points to be our current points plus points to add, and then we'll set our points. Now we're going to do the exact opposite, but it'll be remove points. So we'll get points. We also need to add the input points to remove, and I'll just capitalize that R. And then we'll say that our points are equal to our current points minus points to remove. And what we'll want to do, actually, now that I think about this, is go ahead and clamp this integer. The max, we can just make some absurdly high number. And for the min, we'll put 0. And this just means that we'll never drop below 0 points. All right, so we can now add points and we can remove points. So now we need to call these in the appropriate location. So what we're going to do is go ahead and come to our enemy blueprint, our base enemy. And inside of here, we have logic for the enemy dying right here on event take damage, where we destroy the actor. Just before we do this, we are going to go ahead and add our points. Now, what we'll need to do first off in begin play is get a reference to our game instance. So we can right click and do get game instance. And we can go ahead and cast to BP underscore game instance, which is the blueprint we just created. Then we can go ahead and promote that to a variable, and I will just rename it to BP game instance. Now what we can do is grab our game instance reference, and we can add points. And this is where we will be adding our points. So what we're going to do, instead of just adding a number directly in here, is create a variable, and we will call it points to add on death. And this will be an integer. Now the reason we're doing this is that in future videos, we're going to create different types of enemies, and different enemies will give different amount of points, and that can be easily adjusted by having it as a variable. So we'll compile, and I'll just say that the default enemy gives 10 points when you kill it. Of course, you can make this whatever you want. All right, so when the player dies, or when the enemy dies, it is now going to grant the player 10 points. So what we're going to do is actually come over to the main menu we created in the previous video. So we'll come to main menu UI, open this up. And now inside of here, we have this upgrades button. So when we click on this button, we want to open the upgrades menu. And inside of this menu, we'll be able to see how many points we have. And of course, in the future, what we can buy. So the way we're going to do this, instead of creating a brand new widget, is to actually use something called a widget switcher. So we'll search up widget switcher, and we'll just add it to the canvas. Now what a widget switcher does is it allows you to switch between multiple widgets inside of a single widget. So we're going to rename this to be main menu widget switcher. And we'll just set this to be the size of our canvas, just like so. And then we're going to drag this entire vertical box, which contains all of these buttons, into the widget switcher. Now, by default, this is going to fill up the entire menu, and I'm fine with that. If you don't want that, you can always adjust the alignments and the scale of it, but I'm perfectly fine with this. So what we're going to do now is in our upgrade button, when we click on it in the details panel, we will create an event for on released, just like with our other buttons. And what we'll do is we will get the main menu widget switcher, and we'll set active widget index, and we'll set it to 1. So in terms of the widget switcher, 0 is currently the main menu, which is this guy, and 1 will be the upgrades page, which we are about to create. So what we can do is click on our widget switcher and then come to the details, and we can set the active widget to 1. Actually, before we do that, we need to create a vertical box, throw that on the widget switcher, and now we can switch it to 1. So just for the sake of our own sanity and knowing what we're working with, we're going to rename this first vertical box to main menu vertical box, and we'll rename this guy to be upgrades vertical box. All right. So what we can do now is go ahead and add in all the elements we want to our upgrades page. So for now, we're just going to start with a simple text, just like this. We will align it to the center, and we'll change the font to 48. What we're then going to do is actually set up the text for this. Now, unlike with our previous text where we bind, there's actually no need to do that in this case, because the amount of points we have is never going to change when we're in the main menu, besides when you buy or sell something, which have very easy events that we can use. So we can actually save some performance by not binding, and instead setting this to be a variable, and we'll rename this to be player points text. Now what we can do is come over to our event graph. We can get rid of event tick and pre-construct. And then on construct, we will get that player's point text. And we can call set text. And we'll want to use the function for this, not just setting the text directly. So what we can do is now plug in the text we want right on construct. But in order to do that, we need a reference to the game instance so that we can get our points. So before that, we will call get game instance. We will cast to BP underscore game instance. We'll promote this to a variable just in case we want to reference it later on. And then from here, we can get points. Now if we hook this up, what we can do is we can make this a toString, and we'll call append. We'll go ahead and move this to B. We will empty out A. And then in A, we'll just say points. And then we'll put in a little space, and then we'll display the amount of points the player has. You can, of course, put whatever you want in A. I'll then hook up this return value to the text. So now whenever the main menu is loaded, we are going to set the text to be whatever amount of points the player has. And we can actually go ahead and test this out. So if we can actually start in the main menu now that we have one. I'll just go ahead just so we can see it in action. Or, sorry, I forgot. One more thing we need to do is if we come to our main menu, we actually need a back button when we're in the upgrades. When we're in the upgrades panel, we need a back button so that we can return to the main menu. So what we can do is we can add a button. I will align this, let's say to the bottom. We will add in some text to this button, and we'll rename this button to be Upgrades Back Button. We can change the text to be font size 48, and we'll just change the text to say back. All right. So if we select our button on released event, we can then copy what we did up here for the upgrades button, and we just set it to index 0. Just like so. Now, one last thing we need to do is set our main menu widget switchers active widget back to 0 by default. And sorry, one more thing I forgot we need to do is we need to actually set our game mode to be the project's game mode. So if we come to settings, come to project settings, come to maps and modes, we can find the game instance, and we can set our game instance class to be BP game instance. Now we will be able to collect points, see our points, and move between levels with them. So for example, if we run in the main menu and we come to upgrades, you can see we currently have 0 points. Now one last thing we want to do before we actually go and play the game is make it so that we can return to the main menu from that endgame UI we created in the other video. So we can come to blueprints, we can come to our player UI, and the endgame UI. On return to main menu, we'll hook up the onReleased event, and we will call open level by object reference, and we'll set it to be our main menu map. And now we should be able to do a full loop of the game. The UI looks a bit weird right here in the main menu because it's set to fill screen, but of course I have the outliner on my screen. But if we hit start game, we will start the game. Let's kill a few enemies, get a few points. And now if I just let the enemies kill me, so I've killed 3 enemies, I should have 30 points. Just give it a second, will the enemies kill us? We can now return to the main menu. We can go to upgrades, and we have 30 points. We can start the game again. Let's kill another couple enemies. Just like so. And when the enemies kill us, we should now have 60 points. And there it is. Alright, so that's going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like In the next video, we are going to be setting up logic to actually buy upgrades for our player using the points that we earn. So if you do want to see that, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Also, leave a comment down below if you have any questions. With that said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and good luck with your games.